Foundation. Welcome, my name is Phil Butterfield, and for want of my sins, my siblings have elected me as chair of the Bermuda Health Foundation. And it's a fun job. There's one story I'll tell that sort of puts the role of chairman in perspective. A guy walks into a pet store and he's intending to buy a parrot. And he sees this bird with extraordinary plumage. And he says to the guy behind the counter, "How much is that bird?" So the guy says, "That one is $20,000. He says, "My goodness, what is the bird able to do?" He says, "Well, he speaks a couple of languages and, he's pretty good. And look at his plumage." So the fellow says, "Well, I can't afford 20, but what else do you have?" So he says, "Well, there's another bird here who looks a little older, and his plumage isn't as brilliant." And he says, "Well, how much is that one?" He says, "That's $40,000. He said, "What?" He says, "Come on, he looks nothing like the first one." And he says, "Well, what are his capabilities?" "Well, he speaks 5 languages. He says, "Oh my goodness." So he's almost out the door, and he looks down and he sees this older, not quite disheveled bird, but who's barely on the perch. And his heart says, "Hey, I want a parrot." And he says, "Well, how much is this one?" He says, "That's $100,000. He says, "My goodness, this is ridiculous. This one looks worse than all the others. What are his special capabilities?" He said, "I'm not sure, but the other 2 birds call him chairman." So I feel I am privileged to serve, and that's true. You just have to look the part. Well, welcome to the 13th Annual Salute to Service Award Luncheon. This year, we are distinctly pleased to be able to honor Patrick Tannock, who's the Managing Director of XL Bermuda and the XL Catlin Leadership Council. Patrick's tenure in the insurance and reinsurance sector has been marked, in my judgment, by exemplary professional achievement. His progress to his current position is a tribute to his intelligence, his diligence, his perseverance, and his personal commitment to excellence. The respect of his peers is reflected in the attendance at today's luncheon. In my judgment, Patrick meets all the rules that are necessary to call someone amazing. He's strong, he shows courage, he excels at what he does, he leads from the front, he speaks truth, he lives his values, he aims for genius, he stays humble, he delivers more than is expected, he exudes passion, he inspires others, and I am certain that he is going to change the world. Patrick, congratulations to you, and thank you for being our honoree. This year we have had a record number of applicants for our scholarships, reflective of the current climate that we exist in. 56 young people have submitted applications to us seeking support for their pursuit of careers in the healthcare sector. You will shortly meet this year's recipients, and when you learn about their extraordinary accomplishments, I think you too will join us in feeling very, very proud. On behalf of my fellow directors of the foundation, I want to thank all of the sponsors who, despite the current economic challenges, have decided that our work is worthy of your support. I also want to thank all of the persons who purchased tickets as they entered the room today. We appreciate your generosity. I would also like to recognize a guest at the head table, Linda Moulton, who is the CEO of Executive and International Health at the Leahy Hospital and Medical Center. Thank you for joining us, Linda. You will see by the program that we've divided our responsibilities up amongst us. There's a story about that division, but we'll talk about that later. I would now like to welcome Mr. Noel Pearman to the podium to lead us in a prayer. Mr. Pearman.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's pray. Father, today we thank you for the ways in which you inspire us. You inspire us with the intricacy and the beauty of the created order, with the stars above us and nature around us. You inspire us through your word, through your revelation of who you are, who we are. Many examples of those who have gone before us, and a culmination in the life and the cross of Jesus Christ. And you inspire us by giving us each other as gifts to one another, as we rub shoulders together, as we encourage, challenge, and inspire each other. So we thank you for this opportunity to be here to celebrate Patrick and his impact and his influence in his community. We don't take opportunities like this, settings like this, or the food we're about to receive for granted. So we thank you for these things. Amen.
Good. Please enjoy lunch, and we'll be back with the rest of the program. Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for Gita Blakeney-Salters. You should know that Gita has been a part of this journey with us from inception. So Gita, we thank you for your commitment to us. I'd like to recognize 4 past honorees of the Salute to Service Award who are with us today. Reg Borrows, who was honoree number 1. Dr. Bert McPhee. And last but not least, Sir John Swan. Thank you, gentlemen, for your continued support. Before I ask my younger brother to come up and introduce the scholarship winners to you, I would like to also acknowledge the presence of our latest director, Mr. Charles Brown. You have to have succession planning. It's very, very important. Okay, Vincent.
Good afternoon, everyone. Phil, you didn't have to say your younger brother. They all would have seen that as soon as I got up here. It is my privilege today to announce the Bermuda Health Foundation 2015 scholarship winners. The first winner is Shivon Lee. Shivon is a student at Howard University and is trying to decide whether she should specialize in obstetrics and gynecology or urology, keeping in mind that at present there's only one urologist practicing in Bermuda. Shivon has maintained a 4.0 grade point average while at Howard University. And is among the top 2% of the students in her year. One of her professors has written the following about Shivon in a letter of reference. What was surprising to me was her ability as a freshman in a class with sophomores and other upperclassmen to be vocal during class and positively contributing to the learning environment. Usually, freshmen are intimidated by upperclassmen, but Shivon is confident enough in her knowledge and understanding of the material to not let that sway her. Shyvonne is a graduate of Summerfield Academy, where she also was an excellent student. Shyvonne. Chioma Wasaki. Chioma, a student at Dalhousie University, was inspired to study medicine by her grandfather, Dr. Bertram Ross, and her aunt, Dr. Fiona Ross. A graduate of the Berkeley Institute, Chioma is intending to qualify as a pediatrician by the time she completes medical school. In addition to excelling academically at Dalhousie, Chioma has volunteered at the Black Student Advising Center Monitoring Program, Pediatric Medical Unit at IWK Health Center for Women and Children in Halifax. In addition to serving as a child mentor supporter at a leading hospital in Bolivia, Chioma is described by one of her advisors as a hardworking, reliable, brilliant, and respectful young lady. I think she's not here today, and I think her parents are going to accept the award. I'd just like to ask Ewan and Charlie to come forward.
And now I'd like to call my oldest brother to the podium to fulfill his part of the program.
Why the emphasis on age, I do not know. But I can tell you that they do it every year. And I am personally sick and tired. But there'll be time. I have more mic time later. I'll get things in balance. Our tradition is that each honoree whom we have ever honored has tributes paid to him or her by people who know them well. And there are 3 tributes planned for Mr. Patrick Tannock. The first one is going to be given by Ms. Kim Wilkerson, who is a business associate. Let's welcome her to the podium. And a friend, I should say.
Good afternoon, everyone. It brings me absolute pleasure to be able to stand here and just give a few words in support of Patrick being honored in this manner. He often gets worried when I'm asked to speak. He's like, did you prepare any remarks? And he knows I often don't. And I didn't this time, but I'll tell you why. Because I have the opportunity to simply speak from my heart. And I believe I'm a very, very fortunate, blessed and highly favored employee, individual woman, because I get to work with Mr. Tannock. And every day, And I say every day because, we don't have a Monday to Friday gig. It's our work is such that, it's a constant thing. And for those of you who don't know, my position in the company is the general counsel, and it should be such that I should be advising Mr. Tannock, but often he's advising me. And that's why I'm blessed and highly favored and very fortunate, because when we talk about, a salute to service, right? Service comes in a spectrum of ways, and I get to experience this. And I'm not sure if, people here have an opportunity to work for someone who is absolutely 100% honest with them. And if anybody has that, they can raise their hand. And it's only a couple of hands raised. So you see, I'm saying, I'm a lawyer, but this is a kind of situation where I don't actually have to persuade anybody that Patrick's deserving of this honor, because I think this room is full because people understand his character, right? So I talked about honesty. It's another way of putting it is, when someone has your back in a way that they're going to tell you the truth all the time and it is for your benefit, right? There's nothing better. So we have honesty on the one hand. On the other hand, right, we have generosity, right? And it's mentioned in the program that Mr. Tannock is the head of the Excel Foundation. And our foundation has some money. So, in that capacity, he gets to make decisions about where, Excel Catlin's money should go. But I do know, right, that his personal money, right, is always used for people in all ways, shapes, and forms, to the point that I'm surprised. And I'm like, you did that for that? There's so many things, and he probably is uncomfortable with me saying this because these things are not announced. He gets no fanfare for them. If someone is releasing a book or releasing a record or putting on a show, if he likes the idea, he supports it with his pocketbook. And, that's the kind of service that we get here. Right? The final point, I think, is just his level of integrity. And in that regard, people who know Patrick will know that one of the things he always says about service and about Bermuda is that what we need to do, and this goes from the personal to the national, is make a distinction between service and servitude. And his whole mantra is about service. And if we think about service on a personal level, that's how we serve our friends and family, right? With honesty, with integrity, with generosity, right? How we serve our work colleagues and our employer, with integrity, with generosity, with honesty, but also how we serve our nation. And I think the comments from Mr. Butterfield earlier, he said, in his introduction, that he believed that Patrick had the ability and is in fact changing the world. And I agree with that. Because if you could imagine, when we get to a place where everybody buys into this concept of, service over servitude and understanding the difference, we're talking about moving our nation, right? And just a final point about generosity. I was talking to Lisa Harvey Swan just now, and I said, sometimes I have a hard time remembering things. But, it was just yesterday, we were having a conversation with another colleague who mentioned to us, he says, we have a student, and I really wondered if you'd have time to speak to the person. So, of course. But Patrick says, no, that's the rule. It's not a question of can we or should we. That's the rule. That is how we operate. When we have time, we have to talk to everybody. So we see constantly through our doors all kinds of people, young and old and in between, students and parents who are coming for advice. And Patrick never says no. And it is just amazing how he manages to find the time, but it's important to him, and it's again part of this concept of service. And so he's such a broad example of, how we can give service on a personal level, on a professional level, in our companies, and to our nation. And I'm just excited to see so many people here today to honor someone who actually worked so hard for me. So, congratulations, Patrick.
Thank you, and thank you for not extending your remarks into the evening. The next tribute to Patrick will come from a friend, Dr. Crystal Clay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I promise not to extend my comments into the evening. I came with 3 points, and I suspect that I will be through in less than 3 minutes. But first, I want to congratulate our awardees, Shaivon, who is a dear friend of mine, and Shayama in her absence. Congratulations, well done. Now I'd like to focus our attention on a dear friend of mine who we are all celebrating today. And I am really honored because I believe that I'm speaking on behalf of many who are in this room, and some of the themes have already been spoken. And that's the great thing about Patrick, is that the themes are consistent. Everyone is saying the same thing. And so forgive me for repeating what has already been said. But I certainly congratulate the Bermuda Health Foundation for celebrating a true son of the soil. Patrick Tannock. While there are many connotations and interpretations of the phrase son of the soil, I do not use it loosely, politically, or with flattery, but say it definitively to describe my sentiments of what a true son of the soil represents. There are many things I could say about what Patrick does. The mentoring, the giving generously, as Kim just said, his contributions, international representation of Bermuda, not just our Bermuda brand, but Bermuda and business internationally. But today I actually speak about who Patrick is, the character and values that I have witnessed over the years. This week, while away on business, we were given a tour of a winery at Niagara-on-the-Lake. It was my first time having experienced such an event. And while others were indulging, in the literal sense, I was carefully observing and listening as I learned about the various aspects of winemaking. As I reflected on my visit, I noted that there were many parallels to Patrick's journey as a leader. I will highlight 3. The wait. A farmer doesn't plant and look for a harvest the next day. He waits. Sometimes during the wait, there are storms, there are droughts, invasion of crops, dry seasons, but he still plants. Patrick did exceptionally well in university. I believe, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, graduated at 19. Represented the university at RIMS, held solid summer internships, built a great network, etc. And yet, returned home to an economic downturn, recession, and first job was mopping the floors at the hospital. Some may have said that all of that was in vain. But underneath the soil, there he was, building a work ethic, learning humility, developing empathy, learning how to lead, building supervisory skills, and to my memory, became a supervisor. Patrick can therefore relate to anyone. He reminds me of a story I heard about a nurse several years ago. And the nurse said, during my second year of nursing school, a professor gave us a quiz. I breezed through the questions until I read the last one. What is the first name of the woman who cleans the school? Surely this was a joke. I had seen the cleaning woman several times, but how would I know her name? I handed in my paper, leaving the last question blank. Before the class ended, one student asked if the last question would count toward our grade. Absolutely, the professor said. In your careers, you will meet many people. All are significant. They deserve your attention and care. Even if all you do is smile and say hello. I've never forgotten that lesson. I also learned her name was Dorothy. And that was from a nurse named Joanne Jones, who reminds me of how Patrick lives his life. From the custodian to the mailroom to the highest level of executive or political sphere, he knows your name. So often people don't realize his role until it is actually revealed to them. In other words, the roots were growing deep and a foundation was being set for the future, even while he was mopping the floors. The second thing I learned at the winery, called the Trias at Hildebrand, was about the process. I learned about the very delicate and complex process of making ice wine. The grapes, having already reached full ripeness in October, are left untouched on the vines until the first deep freeze of the Canadian winter. The harvest takes place between December and January at temperatures -9 to -13 Celsius. The farmers then go out at 3 a.m. and hand-pick the grapes in their natural frozen state. After the frozen grapes have been harvested, they are pressed while still frozen. The winery doors are left open to maintain the sub-zero temperatures. As with Patrick, people see the final product, but they have not seen the pressing, the crushing, the rejection, the undermining, and the night seasons of his life in his early career years. They have built strength and shaped his character. He had to undergo a blaze to trail for the future generation of insurance professionals and others in this community. A trailblazer indeed. The last point that I observed was the secret to success. The winemaker spends countless hours and days, sometimes months, trying to get the formulas right to make a good wine. He never knows what kind of crop he will receive. He does know one thing, however. For the red wine, the secret is in the skin. Now, you all probably know this, but I didn't. The skin of the grape is arguably the most important ingredient of the red wine. What you see on the outside is not always what you get on the inside. The opposite is true of Patrick. What you see is what you get. He is a truth teller. He will never give you the answer you are looking for or tell you what is good. He will tell you what he believes is right. A man of integrity who cares and is passionate about people and cares deeply about his community and is never willing to compromise on his values. When we talk about sons of the soil, again, we're not talking about just sons. We're talking about sonship. Sonship, a representation of who you are, an ambassador for the country. I am therefore putting out an SOS, not save our souls, but a call to action for more sons of the soil like Patrick Tannock to rise to the challenge in this season, fertilize the land, and bring forth good fruit. Matthew speaks of a treasure hidden in the field, which a man found and again and hid again. And from joy over it, he goes and sells everything that he has and buys that field. Thank you, Bermuda Health Foundation, for finding this Bermuda treasure, son of the soil, and celebrating Patrick Tannock's life today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Crystal. And finally, they say no one knows the honoree like someone on the bloodline. And so now we're going to have a tribute to Patrick Tannock from his son, Matari. Wow. I'd first like to start by saying I'm honored by this privilege to be talking on behalf of my father. I'd like to say with having no daughters, my father's been stuck with his two young sons, now young men, as he claims, which will always consider as his little and not so little boys. There's no question that Kamari and I have the best possible father and role model. I remember back in middle school, I used to have to write the "Who is your hero?" speech and essays, and I always chose to write about my father, simply because it was easy to compose. He was one of the smartest, bravest, most loyal people in my life. He is a man who bases his wealth on what he has to share. He has always supported Kamari and I through all our endeavors and taught me life lessons that have shaped me to become the person I am today. It is not always the big things, but the small things that you take the time out to do which mean the most, such as the little handshake you do. It all means everything. One thing my father has always given me is support. He has always stuck by me. He has always supported me academically and has always spoken about how important it is to maintain focus in your schooling and excel in your studies, because that is your ticket through the door. Any advice or question that we had about school, he was always happy to help and teach us in any way he can. He has also supported us on the athletic side. That includes coming to my all-star baseball games, my football games, and my brother's basketball games, despite the fact that he didn't know too much about either one of the sports. Football, yes. Basketball, sort of. Not baseball. Don't ask him about it. But ultimately, none of that mattered to me, because knowing that he was on the sidelines to support me is what mattered. I eventually chose to focus on football, otherwise known as soccer, my main sport. And my father was a football player back in his day, PHC. Also played for a season at Division I Hartford, so always treasured his advice. He would always take the time out to come out with me in the field, or even Sunday afternoon to kick the ball against the wall, or even to practice drills with my weaker foot. And he's always supported me, and it's got me to where I am today. I've won 2 championship rings in my first 2 years of college, and I wouldn't have had that opportunity without his support. He supported me at my lowest and taught me that hard work and perseverance are as vital as anything. 2 key traits he has bred in me since birth. My father and my mother always ensured that my brother and I had a basic understanding of our ethnic and racial background. I had to be safe, you know? I had to be safe. Respect your ladies. I had to be safe. I had to be safe. Okay. They always ensured we had an understanding of our racial and ethnic backgrounds, where we came from. We watched countless African American movies, visited museums all across the states, and had opinionated discussions on the topic of racial equality or inequality for that matter. And after all, when you discriminate against anyone, you discriminate against everyone. He also taught the importance of values and maintaining a certain standard. I remember when I was around 10 years old, and my father asked me to pick up the clothes off the floor. I said, why? Looking back, he then casually asked me to go pick up the phone. I looked at him and I picked up the phone. He said, call the maid. I said, we don't have a maid. He said, my point exactly.
He said it is vital. True story, true story. So the lesson was from that, he said you have to learn to take care of your responsibilities no matter how big or small. And do you ever think and take the time to wonder which one of my parents is the disciplinarian of the family? The safe answer is both are. My father would always discipline me, but for some reason I always fear my mother, and I do to this day. But despite the necessary discipline, my father has always shown me a lot of love and compassion. He has gone through a lot with me and my brother, but he has always stood up beside us and never gave up on us. I could only hope that one day in the far, 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 far future, add a couple more fars, that I could be the father he once was to me, or is to me. My father has served as a mentor for several young Bermudians over the years, ensuring that they are pointed in the right direction. I'm blessed enough to have that figure like him, a figure like him at my disposal, that pour advice on anything, education, athletics, or a simple life decision. And I appreciate that about him more than he will ever know. An important piece of advice he always gives me and has given me throughout my whole life is, although it is vital to maintain unbreakable confidence, you must remain humble about your achievements. He has always, in my eyes especially, let his actions speak louder than his words. I'd like to end with his favorite quote that he has drilled into my mind. Don't talk the talk, walk the walk, and he certainly walks the walk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataria. I made a note here in my program, political future. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard the accolades, and you have heard them from different perspectives. Would you please now join me by standing and welcoming to the podium our honoree, Mr. Patrick Tannock.
You take it right after me. I have to say, you may be seated. I have to say that the accolades are all solid and true.
And it is my job to present this award to Patrick. But I cannot do it without telling him that, giving him a thought that has occurred to me. There are people who rise to high places in the corporate world, and they are often referred to as window dressing. Patrick Tannock is no window dressing. He is the real thing. And so, Patrick, on behalf of the Bermuda Health Foundation, I present to you the Salute to Service Award, dated June 19, 2015. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. I'd just like to say congratulations to the students. You've worked extremely hard, and we are very, very proud of you guys. I'd like to say a special thank you for receiving this award, and I want to say thank you to my wife, who I love more and more every single day. Thank you for your sacrifice, Shakita. We appreciate you. Thank you. And I want to say thank you to my mom and dad. Thank you for instilling the values and a strong sense of right and wrong. I really appreciate that. And to my family members that are here today. I also want to say thank you to my friends that are here as well. I appreciate you guys. And I want to say thank you to my colleagues, many of you who have become my personal friends. Thank you. Now, I just want to spend a moment just talking about how I got here today, okay? Because it's a very interesting story about that. We were down in Sarasota a couple of months ago, just hanging out. So my youngest son is doing the basketball thing down there, and my oldest son had flown down for the weekend because he was on spring break. And I get this email from Dr. Brown telling me about well, actually, he wasn't telling me about a reward. He was asking me if I would call him and let him know when it was a good time for us to connect. So anyway, I sent him an email, and he got back to me pretty quickly. And he told me that I was being honored by the Bermuda Health Foundation. And so I said, are you kidding me? I said, you know I'm a business guy, right? And I said to him, I said, so 2 years ago, you gave this award to Dr. Malcolm Brock, who's one of the smartest people that this country has ever produced, and he's probably in the top percentile of intelligent people on the planet, and he's about this close to coming up with a cure for cancer, right? And then last year, you gave it to Miss Williams, who single-handedly raised 6 boys who have done extremely well, one of them whom I have the pleasure of actually working with, who's an actuary, but these boys all turned out to be accountants and lawyers and doctors. And I said, and you're giving it to me? I said, I'm not feeling you, Doc. I'm really not feeling you. So you got to talk some more. So he said to me, well, you know what? It's for a really good cause, and we've given it to other people in the community for their service. So I said, okay, so it's for a really good cause. I said, okay, I think I can connect the dots. So I said, let's rewind the conversation and start at the beginning. And so I said, thank you for considering me for this award. All right? Now, there's been a process of me getting here. And the second thing that happened was, I've been traveling a lot because we've had the merger, we've had a lot of things going on. So anyway, I'd gotten back from a trip, and Karen had said to me that Philip Butterfield was trying to get a hold of me. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So anyway, we arranged to talk, and so Phil calls me up, and he basically says to me that I have to get 3 people to talk about me. And anybody who knows me, the thought of being in a room with 3 people talking about me was actually absolutely mortifying to me, right? And, I thought about it, and I ran into my good friend Kim Wilson. I guess it was last week. We were at Gil Tucker's retirement party. And I said, Kim, I am really nervous about this because I don't know what these people are going to say, but just the thought of it. So she put it in perspective. And basically what she said was, would you rather have it now, or would you rather have it when you're 6 feet under? So anyway, but you know what? I might not be in the same type of intellectual spectrum as a Malcolm Brock, but Marie Tannock and Davis Tannock did not raise a fool. So I was very strategic in terms of who I asked to speak for me. And as you will note, none of my boys spoke for me because some things are better left unsaid, right? So the 2 people who actually spoke, I chose 2 ladies, and I'm not a chauvinist, and anybody knows me knows that I'm not a chauvinist. But I figured the 2 ladies would say some nice things. And even though my son is much taller than me and bigger than me, he's only 19, so he's still under my roof, and he's still on my payroll. So he had to say a few nice things. Now, the third thing that happened on my journey to get here today was that I talked to Ms. Furbit in terms of, what was I supposed to do? Was I supposed to give a speech, or what's the deal? So she said, yes, you can, I want you to speak about whatever you want to speak about today. And I was like, oh, really? Okay, so what should I speak about today? And many subjects went through my mind. Some of the subjects that went through my mind is the work that we're doing with ABIC in terms of making sure that there's a heightened awareness of the value proposition of international business, why the companies are here, what some of the challenges are, and why it matters to you in Bermuda. But somehow that just didn't really feel right, even though it would have been a nice opportunity to change the dialogue in terms of that the companies are here because of what, it would have been a real good opportunity to change the dialogue from the companies are taking advantage to we get everything that we need, not just what we want. The other subject that went through my mind was maybe I could talk about adaptability as the new competitive advantage. Or maybe another subject would have been, the rate of change and how it's impacting our lives and how it's really having an impact on every single thing that we do. I also thought about, okay, maybe I can talk about how we have to make a lifelong commitment to constantly upgrading our skill sets to make sure that they're relevant and current, especially in a world that's being impacted by an accelerated rate of innovation. I thought that might be kind of cool. And then I said, maybe I can talk about the fact that we don't have to deny the real progress that's been made to have an honest conversation about some of the problems and some of the challenges that still remain. But somehow, none of those subjects really seem to feel right. Not for today, okay? Especially when I reflect on the fact that there's so many of our people that are hurting today, and so many of our fellow Bermudians are hurting in ways that they could have never imagined in their lifetime. These are extremely challenging times, and although I'm absolutely confident that we're going to get through this, we can't ignore the challenges that our people are facing. So I thought what I would talk about today would be the importance of being our brother's keeper, and how our very survival hinges not on what we keep, but what we give. And it's in the giving. And it's in the giving that we not only survive to see another day, but we live to thrive to celebrate another day. And how we can all do so much more. We all have a duty to share our knowledge and success. And as you guys are empowered by wisdom, by cultural awareness, by experience, by knowledge, share it with others. Don't underestimate the difference that one person can make and that we can all make collectively. And I just want to share with you guys some incidences that happened in my life that have been profoundly impactful for me. Back when I was a young man, junior in college, or maybe I was a senior in my last semester, I was writing a paper, and the paper that I was writing was titled The Bermuda Market, Its History, Its Current Status, and Its Future. And this was back in 1979, and I was about 18, 19 years old. And, pardon me, but back then I wasn't aware that anybody who thinks that they can predict the future is a poor student of history. So forgive me for that one. But anyway, as the story goes, I was home for the semester. I was home for the Christmas break. And I remember walking into the then Register of Companies office, a fellow by the name of Shelton Burgess. And I walked in without an appointment. I walked into his office, and this man found the time to talk to me. And we spent a couple of hours just talking about his vision for Bermuda in terms of how he was going to set up the framework to establish and to attract companies to come to Bermuda. Unfortunately, he had a dinner that evening, and I was flying out the next morning. So he asked me if I could be in his office at 7 o'clock the following morning before I went back to school. And I remember, my mom probably doesn't remember this, but she took me down there to see him. And I went down there, and I was there for a couple of hours until it was time for me to get on the flight. Now, the message here is that this man found the time to talk to me. And ultimately, I did get an A on the paper, and I submitted it and got a $1,000 reward from the Brokers Association, so it was kind of cool. But the real message is that we have to find the time. And you don't know what the dividends are going to be when you're making that time, but trust me, they can be pretty profound. Now, the second thing I want to share with you guys in terms of things that impacted my life was that when I applied for a scholarship at the Bank of Butterfield Scholarship, and we didn't have websites and we didn't have all this help that you guys have today. So I submitted my application, and the guy called me up and said, I really like your essay. But then he said to me, guess what? There is no medical advice in terms of whether you're healthy. There's no evidence of your citizenship. So he gave me 48 hours to get that information into him. And, he didn't have to do that. He really didn't have to do that. And I share this story with you because obviously the statute of limitations is passed now. And so for any of the other applicants who didn't get the scholarship, it's too late now. So tough luck, right? But this was an example of someone willing to step out of the zone and help someone else. And I'm forever grateful for that because everybody doesn't come from the same background. And sometimes the playing field is still not level. Now, the third thing I want to talk to you guys about is that at Excel, we have what we call a global day of giving. This is a day when we shut the company down, basically, and we share our skill sets, we share our time, we try to enhance the communities by doing whatever, at different charities and whatnot. Anyway, last year, or maybe was it last year? I can't remember. Maybe it was last year. Maybe it was 2 years ago. We came up with a relatively innovative concept. We went around to Victor Scott School, and just in case you think we're trying to do a photo op, we have very deep connections with Victor Scott School. My mother actually went there, and Durbin's mother went there as well. And Javon Williams, I don't know where Javon is, but Javon is still very actively involved with the school, as are many of our colleagues at Excel. And what we did was we actually increased the awareness of potential career opportunities for the students that were there. Did it for a day. We talked about what they needed to do in terms of a blueprint for how they were going to be successful. And it wasn't just insurance careers. This was kids wanted to be astronauts. Kids wanted to be football players. So we really talked to them about the importance and gave them a blueprint in terms of you got to finish college, you got to do this, bum, 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 bum. And it was great. But I got to be honest with you. From my perspective, it did feel a little bit like a glorified photo op. So we made a commitment that we would go back to the school and we would do something that we thought was going to be a lot more sustainable. And so we actually had many of our colleagues go to the school and we picked a class, we worked with the teachers, and it was a class of 9 and 10-year-olds. And what we did is we had a project for them where they would have to make a presentation to some of the people that are sitting in this room. And a lot of the kids had never even been in an international business environment. We had 9 and 10-year-old kids actually doing market surveys and having to present a business plan. And there was a prize. And, to me, this was increasing the awareness of increasing the awareness of career opportunities for these kids. And to me, I just took so much pleasure in that. And I just want to pause for a minute. And I want to acknowledge someone who's in the audience. And I want to acknowledge Brian O'Hara, because this really started with the Bryans, Brian O'Hara and Brian Dupereau. Can you stand up, Brian, please? Yeah. These guys really set a trend because international business was relatively new back in the mid-'80s. And, when it comes to international companies, they don't really have to do anything. If we give to the community, we're not expecting to see an increase in our revenues. We can't do business here. So we don't expect anything. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. Okay? We want to enhance the lives of people in our communities. And some people say, well, maybe we could give more, maybe we could give less. But the fact of the matter is that we're giving and we're doing it because it's the right thing to do, whether it's our skill sets or whether it's our time. And obviously the money as well, which I think helps a lot. So, very proud to be associated with that. So, I say all that to say that we can all make such a big difference in everyone's life. And I say this phrase all the time, and people get tired of me hearing me say this, but nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Now, I would like to just acknowledge the healthcare profession because to me, you all epitomize the concept of selflessness. You guys walk that walk every single day. You are constantly putting people above yourself and putting others first. And if we could all take a page out of that book, this would be such a better place. And I'm not, I really believe that. It would be a much better place. And I just want to give a quick quote from Nelson Mandela, who's one of my heroes, the late, great Nelson Mandela, who once said that what counts in life is not the mere fact that we lived. It's the difference that we made in the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life that we have led. Nelson Mandela. That is a true icon. I was a little taken aback when I saw the word icon being referred to as an icon. That's who I consider to be an icon. Not me. Definitely not me. Now, I'm going to finish up, but I just want to say for the record that I absolutely believe in mentorship. It absolutely works. Sometimes you don't get the dividends right away, and mentorship never, ever stops. It's not just the young people that are being mentored, it's the older people as well. Everybody could be mentored. The day that we all think we got it figured out, that's the day when it's all over. We can always continue to learn. Now, I just want to acknowledge one other person, and she's going to kill me for this, but I want to ask Karen Wolf to stand up. Karen Wolf is my executive assistant, and she's been with me for almost 20 years. And with all the people that I've talked to over the years, all the people that I've mentored, no one gets to see me without talking to Karen. Those guys who try to see me on a Friday night when I'm kind of trying to relax and they want to talk to me about their careers, and I keep handing my business card and say, can you call me Monday morning? And they continue to persist and wanted to have this conversation. I'm like, just call Karen. Please call Karen. I really don't. I do have a day job as well. We run a big company, but anyway, thank you, Karen. I want to say thank you for everything that you do. Now, I just want to end by saying that most men are born different, but die as clones. We all have the opportunity to make a profound difference in the lives of others if we would only just reach out and share our wisdom, our knowledge, our cultural awareness, and our success. So make it happen, people, and make a difference. Okay? I believe in you guys, and I believe in Bermuda. So thank you very much. I will treasure this award for the rest of my life. Thank you. I appreciate it, you all.
Thank you, Patrick. I just made another note in my program. My job at this time, ladies and gentlemen, is to give you a few bits of information. Usually I report on the annual golf competition between myself and my brothers. This year's competition took place in Turks and Caicos. And, of course, I was penalized because I had the advantage, they said, of knowing the course better than they knew it. But we went and played anyway, and I was ahead after the first day, but we had to stop the competition because of weather conditions. But I think that I'm going to ask the board to still give me some sort of reward for leading after the first day. The next piece of business is a vote of thanks to Laverne Ferbert and her sister, Maxine Esdale, for their work today. And I want to acknowledge today as a special day for Dr. Bert McPhee, whose birthday is today. You remember I said when Phil came to the mic and started talking about his older brother coming up, and some of you probably forgot that I said that I was going to balance things out? I'll do it now. Phil and his wife went to the doctor. It's a true story. And it was for the annual checkup, actually. And it was covered by their insurance. And they both went in and had the exam, and the same doctor examined both of them. And then he called them into the room to have a consultation. And he said, you know, you guys are in remarkable shape. However, I have detected memory loss. So he said, well, so this is what I want you to do. When you communicate at home, write things down. Because, you'll have less friction, less tension in the house, fewer arguments. Just write it down. So they said, fine, Doc, thank you. And they went home. And that night, they were watching a movie. And Phil's wife said to him, honey, would you get me some ice cream? And he said, of course, dear, because, everything was very positive. He said, of course, I'll get the ice cream. And he starts putting on his robe, and he's going down to the kitchen. And she said, sweetie, write it down. Because the doctor said, we should write things down. He said, no problem. Ice cream, easy. So he's walking down the steps, and she shouts out, sweetie, would you put some strawberries on that ice cream? And he said, no problem. Ice cream and strawberries. She said, darling, write it down, please. No problem. Ice cream and strawberries. And just as he gets down to the refrigerator, she shouts out again, sweetie, could you put a little whipped cream on that for me? And he said, okay, no problem. She said, write it down. He said, who can't remember that? Ice cream, strawberry, and whipped cream. Easy. So she left him alone. He was down there stirring about 10 minutes, came back up to the bedroom, opened the door, and he walked in with a tray. And he said, ta-da! Took the top off, bacon and eggs. But that's not it. His wife says, where's my toast? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. See you next year.